So our second speaker is Baeten, professor of urban studies at Malmö University and the director of the Institute of Urban Research. He has been the principal investigator in the Strong Research Environment CRUSH, Critical Urban Sustainability Hub. He has also recently finished a research project on smart cities with case studies in Toronto and Copenhagen. And today he will talk about the project Smart Cities for city officials and present the major output of this project, which is an open online open access course.
Okay, what is Smart Cities for City Officials? It's kind of a MOOC, which you are familiar with, I guess. So it's certainly, I say kind of, because it's certainly open, it's certainly online, it's certainly a course, but I don't think it's massive. We have like 170 subscribers, so you know it's nice, but massive it is not. So we were thinking of calling it the OOC. But who wants to call his own work an OOC? You know, and what do you do with OOCs? So let's call it moderate open online course. It's certainly also a Corona product. So we had money. We received money just before Corona crisis, and then, well, all of a sudden we were all sitting stuck at home in front of our computer, couldn't do the field work and other stuff we were thinking to do. And in that project, Smart City for City Officials had a course promised in it, but we were thinking like, let's do something small scale. That was the initial idea, like a day on campus or something. So we upscaled that idea, Smart City for City Officials, to something big, like in an open online course. Because we were looking around, and there is a massive amount of courses on smart cities available on the internet, but as far as we could see, there was not a single smart city course that had social sciences at its starting point. So we believe we are the first one to do a social science perspective on smart cities on the internet. And so we're mainly directed at city officials and practitioners, but it's open to all. So when you subscribe, you have to simply tell your name and what you do. So you can also be a researcher or a student or a citizen. And it's motivated by conversations with city officials and based on interviews with prominent researchers, which we then have cutted and pasted and turned into lectures or modules. So we offer an overview of the current debates on smart cities in the social sciences, because it's kind of impossible to provide the overview. So we're highly subjective, and there is no way we can... Is that one of those? I had forgotten. So we have many outputs. We have this online course, and I will show you the teaser in a minute, which exists both as a video, but also as an audio. So if you don't want to look at the video, you can simply listen to what these people are saying as a kind of podcast. It also exists as a book, and so we printed the transcript. So if you don't want to use technology, you can simply read in the old-fashioned way. And we also have a conference panel, and the smart people amongst you will know that it's taking place as we speak. And then we also had a theme issue on smart cities, where we recycled partly the material we had collected for the course and turned it into articles in IUR's, the Institute for Urban Research, internal journal, Urban Matters, which is brand new. There's some kind of commercial in here as well. Have a look at it. It's pretty. Good. So that's what we have produced. We wanted to offer the course material in different forms, because we know city officials are busy. They have to do that often in the evening or over the weekend. So we offered it in different formats so that people could listen to it or look at it or read whatever was best at that moment. So it was co-created with a lot of city officials. We have been interviewing city officials. We also had focus groups, 2 focus groups with city officials to find out what they know and what they want to know and what they don't want to know. And we also work together with the Malmö University Center for Teaching and Learning and with Malmö Innovation Office. We learned, that the traditional, and that's what we are very used to, academics, to have when you teach, when you develop a course, you have a teacher-student relation. There is a hierarchy. That would not work in this context, so we had to rethink, because none of us had ever done that. So you're working with a skilled classroom, and that requires a different pedagogical approach. There should be no hierarchies. It should be explicitly interactive. You as a teacher are going to learn just as much as they, etc., etc., etc. So one of the city officials we interviewed, we thought was so interesting that we turned her into a teacher. So she's one of the 8 people we have interviewed, and she's now part of the course. And as I said, we offer it in different formats. Okay. These are the 8 people. Some of them are probably in the room. So we have interviewed, and she's part of the course, Jennifer and Jermaine and Rob. But then we also have interviewed Ola Söderström from Neuchâtel, Andrew Karvonen, who is now at the Lund University, Gillian Rose from Oxford, and Linda Gustafsson, that is this gender equality officer of the city of Umeå in the north of Sweden, whom we thought had a lot of good things to say. And then we have also interviewed Bianca Wiley, and some of you, or a lot of you, may know who Bianca Wiley is. She's the Jane Jacobs of smart cities, as I say. She has been fighting Google's plans in Toronto for many years. And as you know, Google withdrew their plans eventually. So I asked Bianca why did they withdraw their plans, and she says, I don't know. That was a very disappointing answer. I thought if someone knows why, it must be her, and she doesn't know. So if she doesn't know, I don't know either. Okay? Maybe you know, Byron. No. Nobody knows. Okay. I don't have to say much about that. So these are the 8 themes. If you have a look at the course proper, you will learn more about these themes. And this was the bulk of the work, and to put together, to cut and paste, to prepare modules, to film connectors, to all the questions, prepare the written compendium, etc., etc., etc. If you don't have a lot of time and money, don't do such a OOC or MOOC or whatever you want to call it, okay? There's a lot of work that goes into that, and it's mainly Chiara and Adriana who have been working with that. Okay, so co-creation means, that you are going through a organic development of ideas. We willfully did not start with preconceived ideas of what should be there, how should it be organized. So there was a lot of back and forth and back and forth. We have had dozens of sizable meetings on the internet about how we should structure, what should be there, how long should it be, which teams should we have. So it was much slower than we thought. We thought it was going to be more straightforward. We were also surprised by, all the people we asked, they said yes. So they were quite enthusiastic about that. What the most difficult thing, I think, was to translate, a lot of social science is critical by nature. They critique smart cities. Most of us, they're not particularly fond of it. And how to turn that into something that could be useful for practitioners. There is not one entry point for that. There is no self-evident entry point. I'm still struggling with that. There's no straightforward answers. You have to gamble and do it. Also, we're operating in a shifting field. In smart cities 10 years ago, and the relation between smart city developers and cities, that relation is not the same. It changes all the time. And to refer to Jennifer Clark yesterday, the city is not the customer, she said. And this course was sort of based on this idea that was the last years when IBM and Siemens were quite dominant in the smart city discourse. That we sort of had to, and they were trying to make cities customers. We know that didn't really happen. So we thought sort of a bit naively that we had to weaponize cities with social science knowledge, so that when IBM comes knocking on the door, they're ready, right? We learned from Jennifer Clark that they now look more at cities as a sandbox where they can experiment with test beds and living labs, and that requires more collaboration between these giants than the city as customer idea, of course. But in the last recently, we also learned that cities can take charge of smart, if only by inserting it into their marketing strategy, make it part of their innovation strategy to help startups and scale-ups. But we also see, that cities, Jaden was saying, was referring to these mighty corporations with all their money and employees, but cities are also pretty mighty machines with many employees and money. So they can regulate, they can make managerial moves, to refer to Jennifer Clark again. We have seen in recent years that they have started to push back platforms like Airbnb in Barcelona. They have started to push back e-bikes in Copenhagen, for example. So cities can take charge of smart if they want to. And if I would do this course now today, if I would start today, I think I would take that as a starting point. How do cities manage smart cities? How can they simply, if they want to, they have a lot of authority. They can simply forbid Airbnb if they want to. And the pandemic has shown us, how much cities indeed can do, how strong the state can be if it wants to. Okay, then the only thing for me to do is to show you the teaser of the course. And in the middle, there is a moment where the three of us, introduce ourselves. So I'm going to skip that, okay? So you don't want an introduction at the very end of a conference, okay? I hope this works. So far, so good.
When you change a technological system, you're also changing a social system in cities.
And the vast majority of smart city projects are down at the bottom level. They're down at this non-participation consumerism. And although they're branded as citizen-centric, it's fairly, it's within the constraints of this kind of civic paternalism stewardship.
A technical solution or a digital solution, that's not difficult. And that's also something that we can learn from other cities in Europe, for example, that have done it before us, and we can have that exchange. But understanding people's behavior, understanding how power and privilege plays into our possibilities and living conditions as people, that's really, really difficult.
Knowledge differs from data and technologies, and contrary to what some artificial intelligence or deep learning specialists or enthusiasts say, data don't speak by themselves.
I've also been quite interested in work from around notions of sort of data feminism in terms of thinking about data itself, and in particular trying to think of ways of embedding in data the kinds of the sort of partialities, the selectivities, the messiness, the unreliability of data itself.
I have bad news for everybody. This is going to be a lot of work. Like, this is actually going to be more work. We're going to have to think about how we have sustained conversations with all of our communities about what it is that we do with them, rather than this sort of episodic engagement.
That's not an unknown feature in how all of this is being pitched. So it's just so deep, the capture of of narrative and the rhetoric around what a beautiful future looks like. And we can't just think that that power is sitting with the government. That power is happening through a lot of other public areas of discourse, right? So how do we counteract that from a municipal perspective? What are the story? Is it possible to, to tell the local story, to try to build up the truth of what is going well? These are open questions, but I think being aware of the fact that the public is being sold to directly by the corporation in some of these circumstances, the cities need to think about that, because that is power. That is just raw power when corporations are able to define governance narratives independent of the government. That's what this sector has created, and that is a very difficult thing to contend with.
We have to carefully evaluate and consider whether digital technologies are needed at all, and thinking intentionally about what technologies are needed, not just which ones are available.